Invent and Wonder by Jeff Bezos. Introduction. I want you to imagine a boy. He's about 10 years old, sitting in the back of his grandparents' car on a long summer road trip. His grandfather is driving. His grandmother is in the passenger seat, smoking, as she often does. The boy, a little bit obsessed with numbers and calculations, has just heard a public service announcement. It claimed that every puff of a cigarette takes 2 minutes off a person's life. So, he starts doing the math. He estimates how many cigarettes she smokes a day, how many puffs per cigarette. He calculates the minutes, the hours, the days, the years. When he's finished, brimming with the pride of a young mind that has solved a complex problem, he leans forward, taps his grandmother on the shoulder, and proudly proclaims, "At 2 minutes per puff, you've taken 9 years off your life." He expects applause. He expects praise for his cleverness. Instead, his grandmother bursts into tears. The car falls silent. His grandfather pulls over to the side of the highway, gets out, and opens the boy's door. He gently leads him out of the car. The boy thinks he's in trouble. But his grandfather, a quiet, intelligent man, just looks at him and says, "Jeff, one day you'll understand that it's harder to be kind than clever." That young boy was Jeff Bezos. And that single, quiet moment on the side of a Texas highway contains the seed of a philosophy that would later build one of the most influential companies in human history. Today, we're going to journey through the mind of the man who built Amazon. We're exploring his collected writings, a book called Invent and Wander. This isn't just a book about business strategy, it's a blueprint for a way of thinking. It's a collection of letters, speeches, and interviews that reveal the core principles that guided Amazon from a tiny garage startup to a global powerhouse. By the end of our time together, you won't just understand the history of Amazon. You'll understand the timeless, deeply human principles that drive true, lasting success. You'll learn the mental models that can help you make better decisions, take smarter risks, and build not just a great career, but a great life. Because the journey of Jeff Bezos shows us that the same ideas that build a trillion-dollar company can also help you build a life of purpose, adventure, and meaning. So, let's begin. Book summary. To understand the mind of Jeff Bezos, you have to go back to those summers on his grandfather's ranch in Texas. This wasn't a gentleman's farm, it was a real, working ranch in the middle of nowhere. When something broke, and things were always breaking, you couldn't just call a repairman. You had to fix it yourself. His grandfather was a master of resourcefulness. Young Jeff watched him repair a broken-down bulldozer, perform his own veterinary work on the cattle, and solve seemingly impossible problems with whatever tools were on hand. This taught him a lesson more profound than any he'd learn in a classroom. You can invent your way out of any box. Problems are not roadblocks, they are puzzles waiting to be solved. This builder's mentality, this deep-seated belief in self-reliance and ingenuity, became the bedrock of everything that would follow. This love for building was paired with an insatiable curiosity, fueled by a childhood diet of science fiction. Writers like Isaac Asimov and Robert Heinlein weren't just telling stories, they were painting pictures of the future, of what was possible. This combination, a practical, can-do attitude from the ranch and a limitless imagination from science fiction, created a powerful mindset. It's a mindset that sees the world not just for what it is, but for what it could be. Fast forward to 1994. Bezos is now a successful executive at a prestigious Wall Street hedge fund. He's smart, he's successful, and he has a secure, high-paying job. But then he stumbles upon a single, startling statistic. Web usage was growing at 2,300% per year. Think about that for a moment. Not 23%. 2,300%. He had never seen anything grow that fast. His builder's instinct, his sci-fi fueled imagination, it all kicked in. He saw a historic opportunity, a digital land rush. The idea for an everything store began to form, a store that could only exist online. But where to start? He made a list of 20 possible products to sell online, and books were the clear winner. Why? Because the book category is more diverse than any other. There are millions of titles in print, far more than any physical bookstore could ever hope to stock. The vision was born, a universal selection of books, available to anyone, anywhere. So he went to his boss, a man he greatly admired, and laid out his plan. His boss listened patiently and took him for a long walk through Central Park. "You know what, Jeff?" he said, "this is a really good idea. But it would be an even better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job." It was sound, logical advice. Why risk a sure thing for a crazy long shot? This was a pivotal moment, a choice between security and adventure. And to make the decision, Bezos created a mental model he calls the regret minimization framework. It's a simple but profound exercise. He imagined himself at 80 years old, looking back on his life. And from that vantage point, he asked himself a question: would he regret having tried this and failed? The answer was no. But would he regret never having tried at all? The answer was a resounding yes. He knew that decision would haunt him forever. He explains it like this: in the end, we are our choices. Build yourself a great story. And so, he made his choice. He quit his job, and he and his wife Mackenzie flew to Texas, picked up a used car from his father, and began the legendary drive to Seattle. As Mackenzie drove, Jeff sat in the passenger seat, tapping out a business plan on his laptop. The company was born on the road. He chose Seattle for two reasons. It was close to a major book distributor, and it was a tech hub with a deep talent pool, thanks to Microsoft. He called a lawyer to incorporate his new company. He wanted to call it Cadabra, as in abracadabra. The lawyer on the phone misheard him and asked, "Cadaver?" Bezos realized that was not going to work. A few months later, he renamed it Amazon, after the world's largest river, a fitting name for his vision of Earth's biggest selection. The early days were anything but glamorous. He set up shop in his garage. His first desks were built from wooden doors purchased at Home Depot. He, Mackenzie, and a handful of early employees did everything themselves. When an order came in, a bell would ring in the office. Soon, the bell was ringing so often they had to turn it off. In those first few weeks, Jeff himself was on his hands and knees on a hard concrete floor, packing boxes. One day, he said to an employee, "You know, this is killing my knees. We need to get knee pads." And the employee looked at him and said, "What we need are packing tables." It was a light bulb moment. The next day, they got packing tables, and their productivity doubled. It was a simple, early lesson in one of Amazon's most enduring principles: listen. Listen to the people on the front lines. Listen to your customers. They will tell you how to make things better. This leads us to the two foundational pillars of Amazon's philosophy, ideas that Bezos would repeat year after year in his letters to shareholders. They are the twin engines of his success: customer obsession and the day one mentality. First, customer obsession. This isn't just a marketing slogan, it is the company's North Star. Bezos makes a critical distinction: you can be competitor-focused, or you can be customer-focused. Most companies are competitor-focused. They watch what their rivals are doing and try to one-up them. The problem with this, Bezos argues, is that it's limiting. Your progress is tethered to what your competitors are doing. A customer-focused company, on the other hand, has an infinite horizon. Why? Because, as he says, customers are always beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied. Even when they don't know it, they want something better. This constant desire to delight customers, to invent on their behalf, forces you to be a pioneer. A perfect example of this was Amazon's decision to allow customer reviews on its product pages, including negative ones. This was heresy in the retail world. A publisher once called Bezos and asked, "Why would you allow negative reviews? You make money when you sell things." Bezos's response was simple and profound. "We don't make money when we sell things," he explained. "We make money when we help customers make purchase decisions." He understood that building long-term trust was more valuable than any short-term sale. Helping a customer avoid a bad purchase would earn their loyalty in a way that pushing a product never could. This is customer obsession in action. It's about playing the long game. This brings us to the second pillar. It's always day one. Bezos is famous for this mantra. He even named one of the main buildings on Amazon's campus Day One. So what does it mean? Day two, he explains, is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. Day one is the mindset of a startup, nimble, hungry, inventive, and unafraid to take risks. A day one company is always learning, always experimenting, always focused on the future. A day two company becomes complacent. It gets tangled in bureaucracy. It starts managing to proxies, like process, instead of focusing on real outcomes for customers. In a day two company, you'll hear someone defend a bad result by saying, "Well, we followed the process." A day one leader would say, "Then the process is wrong. Let's fix it." For Bezos, the best defense against day two is customer obsession. Your customers are the ones who will pull you into the future. They are the ones who will keep you on your toes, who will force you to keep inventing. This philosophy was put to the ultimate test during the dot-com bust of the early 2000s. The internet bubble had burst, and Wall Street turned on tech companies. Amazon's stock price collapsed, falling from over $100 a share to just $6. Pundits and analysts gleefully branded the company Amazon.bomb and Amazon.toast, predicting its imminent demise. Bezos began his 2000 shareholder letter with a single word: ouch. But while the outside world was panicking, Bezos was focused on something else. He was watching his internal business metrics. And what he saw was a completely different story. The number of customers was growing. Profit per unit was improving. The cost structure was getting more efficient. Everything inside the company was getting stronger, even as the stock price was cratering. He understood a crucial lesson that many investors forget: the stock is not the company, and the company is not the stock. He famously quotes the investor Benjamin Graham, saying, "In the short run, the market is a voting machine, but in the long run, it is a weighing machine." Bezos knew that if he kept his head down and focused on building a heavier company, one with real durable value for customers, the market would eventually recognize it. He was playing a long game, and he was willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time. This long-term thinking also gave him the freedom to fail. This is one of the most important and counterintuitive ideas in the book. Bezos believes that failure and invention are inseparable twins. You cannot have one without the other. If you know in advance that something is going to work, it's not an experiment. He argues that large organizations often embrace the idea of invention, but they aren't willing to suffer the string of failed experiments necessary to get there. At Amazon, they embrace it. Bezos has even said, "I believe we are the best place in the world to fail." He distinguishes between two types of failure. There's operational failure. If you've built hundreds of fulfillment centers and you mess up the next one, that's just bad execution. But then there's experimental failure. This is the kind of failure that happens when you're pushing boundaries, when you're trying something new. That's not just acceptable, it's essential. He points out that business isn't like baseball. In baseball, no matter how hard you swing, the most runs you can score is 4. In business, sometimes when you step up to the plate, you can score 1,000 runs. This long-tailed distribution, as he calls it, is why it's so important to take bold swings. A single big winner can pay for a multitude of failed experiments. The Amazon Fire Phone was a famous, multi-billion-dollar failure. But the team and the technology from that project went on to build Amazon Echo and Alexa, one of the company's biggest successes. The learnings from the failure directly fueled the success. This willingness to experiment and think long-term is what led to the creation of Amazon's three great pillars of success, what Bezos calls his three big ideas: Marketplace, Prime, and Amazon Web Services (AWS). Let's start with Marketplace. In the early days, Amazon's business was simple. It bought products wholesale and sold them to customers. But Bezos had a radical idea. What if he invited other sellers, even direct competitors, to sell their products right on Amazon's own product pages? Internally, this was a civil war. The retail buyers were furious. They argued that it would cannibalize their own sales and make their jobs impossible. But Bezos's logic was rooted in customer obsession. If another seller could offer a customer a better price or better availability, then the customer should have easy access to that offer. Their first attempts at this were failures. They launched Amazon auctions. Nobody came. Then they tried something called Z-shops. Again, crickets. But they stayed stubborn on the vision and flexible on the details. Finally, they launched Marketplace, and it started working right away. Today, nearly 60% of all physical goods sold on Amazon come from third-party sellers. By putting the customer first, they created a win-win. Sellers got access to a massive audience, and customers got better selection and prices. Next came Amazon Prime. This idea also came from the ranks. A junior software engineer suggested an all-you-can-eat buffet of fast, free shipping for a flat annual fee. When the finance team ran the numbers, the results were, in Bezos's own words, horrifying. They stood to lose millions in shipping revenue. There was no spreadsheet that could justify the decision. It was a leap of faith, an intuitive bet based on a simple belief. Customers love fast, free shipping, and if they were offered the best deal in the history of shopping, they would respond. And they did. Today, there are over 100 million Prime members worldwide. But the real genius was how Prime and Marketplace came together. Through a service called Fulfillment by Amazon FBA, sellers could store their products in Amazon's warehouses, and Amazon would handle the packing, shipping, and customer service. The magic key? FBA items became Prime eligible. Suddenly, the flywheel started spinning with incredible force. Sellers flocked to FBA because it dramatically increased their sales. Prime members were thrilled because the selection of Prime-eligible items exploded. Marketplace fueled Prime, and Prime fueled Marketplace. It was a perfect, self-reinforcing loop. The third big idea, Amazon Web Services, is perhaps the most surprising of all. In the early 2000s, Amazon was getting good at running the massive, reliable, and cost-effective computing infrastructure needed for its retail business. They realized that the internal services they had built, for storage, computing, databases, could be offered to other companies. At the time, the idea was radical. What does this have to do with selling books? People asked. But Bezos and his team had a hunch. They saw that companies everywhere were struggling with the undifferentiated heavy lifting of running their own IT infrastructure. By offering it as a pay-as-you-go service, they could free up entrepreneurs and developers to focus on what really mattered: their own products and customers. AWS launched in 2006. And then, as Bezos describes it, the greatest piece of business luck in the history of business happened. For 7 years, they had no like-minded competition. They had a 7-year head start to build a product so far ahead of the curve that it became the dominant force in cloud computing. Today, AWS is a massive business in its own right, powering everything from Netflix and Airbnb to the CIA. It was a bold bet, born from solving their own problem, that completely transformed the technology industry. As Amazon grew from a garage startup into a global giant, Bezos realized that one of the biggest threats to its day-one culture was slow decision-making. He observed that large organizations tend to use a heavy, one-size-fits-all process for every decision, which grinds everything to a halt. To fight this, he developed two powerful mental models for his teams. The first is to classify decisions into two types, Type 1 and Type 2. Type 1 decisions are one-way doors. They are highly consequential and nearly irreversible. Once you walk through that door, you can't easily get back. These decisions should be made slowly, methodically, and with great deliberation. But most decisions, he argues, are Type 2, two-way doors. They are reversible. If you make a bad Type 2 decision, you can just reopen the door and go back through. These decisions should be made quickly, by high-judgment individuals or small groups. The danger is when a large organization starts using the heavyweight Type 1 process for reversible Type 2 decisions. That is when bureaucracy and slowness set in. The second model is the phrase disagree and commit. In a company full of passionate, intelligent people, consensus is often impossible. Teams can get locked in endless debate, and decisions get delayed. Disagree and commit is a tool for breaking that gridlock. It means that even if you don't agree with a decision, you can still commit to it wholeheartedly. It allows a leader to say, "Look, I know we disagree on this, but will you gamble with me on it? Disagree and commit?" It's a way to move forward without waiting for universal agreement. And Bezos emphasizes that this isn't just for subordinates. He himself disagrees and commits all the time. He'll listen to a team, express his reservations, but then say, "You have more ground truth than I do. We're going to do it your way. And I'm with you 100%. These principles, customer obsession, the day-one mentality, long-term thinking, a willingness to fail, and high-velocity decision-making, are the threads that run through all of Bezos's writings. They are the operating system of Amazon. But as the company has scaled, another theme has emerged, using that scale for good. In recent years, Bezos has turned his attention to issues like climate change with the Climate Pledge, which commits Amazon to be net zero carbon by 2040, 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement. He's challenged other retailers to match Amazon's $15 minimum wage. And he's launched the Bezos Day One Fund, a multi-billion-dollar commitment to help homeless families and create a network of high-quality preschools in low-income communities. It's a journey that comes full circle, back to that quiet moment on the side of a Texas highway. Back to the idea that it's harder, and ultimately more important, to be kind than to be clever. Commentary. As we close the pages of Invent and Wander, what are we left with? It's easy to look at the story of Amazon and see it as an almost mythical tale of business success. But I think that misses the point. The real power of this book isn't in the what, it's in the how. It's a masterclass in a way of thinking that is both radically ambitious and profoundly simple. The central lesson, for me, is the incredible power of a long-term perspective. We live in a world that is obsessed with the short term, with quarterly earnings, with instant gratification, with overnight success. Bezos built his empire by systematically ignoring all of that. He was willing to be misunderstood by Wall Street for years, even decades, because he was focused on a different timeline. He wasn't building for the next quarter, he was building for the next decade. This long-term view is not just a business strategy, it's a life philosophy. It's what gives you the patience to learn a difficult skill, the resilience to endure setbacks, and the courage to take on projects that might not pay off for years. It's the understanding that the most rewarding things in life are not built overnight. They are compounded over time, through consistent effort. And that effort is guided by a relentless focus on who you are serving. The idea of customer obsession is so much more than just good service. It's about developing a deep, intuitive empathy for the people you are trying to help. It's about working backward from their needs, both spoken and unspoken, and inventing on their behalf. Whether your customer is a client, a student, a reader, or even a family member, this principle holds true. When you make their delight your North Star, you will never run out of ways to grow and improve. But perhaps the most liberating idea in this whole collection is the embrace of wandering and failure. So many of us are paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake, of taking the wrong path. Bezos reframes failure not as an endpoint, but as a data point. It's a necessary toll on the road to invention. He gives us permission to experiment, to be a little messy, to follow our hunches and our curiosity, even when we don't know exactly where they will lead. Because the greatest discoveries, the truly game-changing breakthroughs, are rarely found on a straight, well-trodden path. They are found by those who are brave enough to wander. So, how can you start applying these powerful ideas to your own life, right now? Here are a few simple actions to consider. First, the next time you face a difficult choice, try the regret minimization framework. It doesn't have to be a life-altering decision. Just pause, and for a moment, imagine yourself at 80 years old, looking back. Which path will you be prouder of? What will you regret more? The sting of a potential failure, or the quiet haunt of never having tried at all? Let that future self be your guide. Second, find your customer. Think about who you are serving in your life right now. It could be your boss at your part-time job, your teacher in your hardest class, or your family at home. Ask yourself, how can I obsess over making their experience better? What is a small invention I can create on their behalf, something they haven't even asked for, that would delight them? This simple shift from focusing on yourself to focusing on service can unlock incredible creativity and goodwill. And third, identify a two-way door decision in your life. Find one small, reversible choice you've been putting off because you're worried about getting it wrong. Make the decision today. See what happens. The truth is, most of our fears are about doors that we can easily walk back through. Give yourself permission to act, to learn, and to correct your course along the way. That was the book summary of Invent and Wander by Jeff Bezos. We certainly touched on the major themes today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary, no matter how detailed, is like looking at a photograph of a great meal. You can see the ingredients, you can appreciate the presentation, but you can't taste it. The real magic, the real flavor of this book, happens when you read it for yourself. It's in the quiet moments when one of Bezos's simple, powerful phrases connects with a challenge you're facing in your own life. This summary is your map, but the treasure is found on the journey. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to grab a copy. It's more than just a book, it's an invitation to think bigger, to be bolder, and to build a more interesting story for yourself. The link is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, and you want to continue exploring the ideas that shape our world, please take a moment to subscribe. It helps us continue to bring you these journeys into the minds of the world's greatest thinkers. Let's keep learning, and keep growing, together.